If you score 99% in your board exams, you may still be unable to make it to the college of your choice at Delhi University. A ridiculous situation and a measure perhaps of how desperately we need a reform of school leaving exams in our country. Thank you, sir.
Even with 95%, Nitya didn't make the cut. After weeks of confusion, the first cut-off list just brought with it more frustration.
Because I included math in my top 4, I have to get 97 for history, and I got 95. So I didn't make it.
I think it's traumatic because how do you tell a child who scored 95% that you should have done better? You know, it's just not fair. With the percentages being at 99.33, it's a bit unrealistic.
While some happy to have managed to scrap through.
I've got 95 and I'm taking history.
But colleges say they have little option, considering the CBSE results left thousands with over 90% and about 9,000 students with 95% and above.
First cutoff is always very high. This time also we have kept it high because we don't want over admissions to take place, because there is always a chance in second and third list to come down.
At the neighbouring St. Stephen's College, a similar story. The management says this year, after the redistribution of courses, there are more students applying for each course. 18-year-old Shrishti Gautam with 97% risked it all to get into St. Stephen's. Just minutes before her interview, she tells us that she gave up on the prestigious college in cities like Bombay and Bangalore for this. But what are her chances? The college says for every one seat, 8 students are being interviewed.
I get the fact that they give marks on the number of points that you've written, but sometimes it can be really unfair on certain students, especially with English, where I know a lot of my friends, even though they have splendid English otherwise, have lost out on marks unnecessarily. And students who can barely speak the language do get marks in it. So CBSE marking system is really not up to the mark.
The percentages are soaring once again. In the top colleges for the commerce stream, the percentages are anything between 99.5% to 97%. For economics, it's anything between 98% to 97%. We've seen a 5% jump for humanities across the board in all colleges from 2012. For computer sciences, in some colleges, the percentage is at 100%. Where does this leave thousands of students? Do we now need to revamp our marking system as well as develop the infrastructure? In New Delhi, with camera person Shameen, Bhairavi Singh, NDTV.
So do we owe it to the lakhs of students across the country who every year seek admission at what they believe is the best institution for them? And does the system let it down year after year after year? What is 100%? Does it actually make sense? Are these reports essentially a piece of paper? What is the true measure of the intelligence or the capability or the ability to work hard or the cognitive ability of a student? These are some of the issues we're going to be looking at this evening. Joining us to debate this, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, former Minister of State in the Human Resources Development Department, Senior Congress Leader. Thanks very much for being with us, sir. Dr. Pratibha Jolly, Principal of Miranda House, Delhi University. Mohandas Pai joins us as well, Chairman of the Manipal Global Education Services. Thank you, sir. Chetan Bhagat, the well-known author. Lata Vaidyanathan, the Principal of Modern School, Delhi. And here with me in the studio, Debraj Mukherjee, Associate Professor of English at Ramjas College at Delhi University. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. Dr. Tharoor, let me come to you first by asking you this. If a student scores 100%, is it necessarily a measure, in your opinion, of their ability, or do you believe that this is just a number?
It's a number, it's a snapshot of their performance in one exam and one date. And the frustration with the system we have is precisely that such life-changing decisions are made by colleges on the basis of this one number, this one snapshot. There's lots of flaws in the system. In the old days, colleges had a great deal more flexibility. They could look at the overall credentials of the student, his or her extracurricular activities, other talents, the background they've come from, make allowances for the marking practices of different boards in different states, conduct an interview and choose a student on the basis of many considerations other than marks. But the Supreme Court, I'm afraid, has legislated this system. Now, we should reassure the kids who haven't got 100% that not everyone is admitted at the first cut-off anyway, and that usually there is a second cutoff 3 days later, a third cutoff, and a fourth cutoff, and so others will make it. But the very fact that we are reducing admissions to this one level, this one yardstick, this one index, is pathetic. And I think we're doing our students a disservice, we're doing our educational system a disservice, and in the long term, we're doing a country a disservice because we're depriving capable people of an opportunity to reveal their talents in the right academic environment, because others, perhaps less deserving, have had higher marks in different boards in different places and been able to make the cutoff. It really is a system crying out for change.
Dr. Pratibha Jolly, as a principal of Miranda House, do you feel that your hands in a sense are bound, that you are forced by a system to accept students who have a certain number when the brightest and the best students that you would perhaps like to have admitted are not going to be admitted? You would never even know who they are.
Well, I do agree with this. You have to have a chance to look at the portfolio of achievements of young students, to be able to interact with them. The entire system rests on a trust deficit, and therefore the only fair and transparent measure seems to be marks of some board of examination. Then it isn't a level playing field, because increasingly students are coming from all across the country. They study in different setups, different environments, and even when you have the same board, let me say the quality of education from institute to institute varies, because the mission of education in the last 2 years, even in the best schools, is almost to put all students on the factory line to ensure that they get this 100 on 100. So I think that often in the cutoffs, when you say it's 100%, it is not saying the student has scored 100, but you're saying certain category of students have to be eliminated. For instance, you're saying that a commerce student is scoring pretty high, you can't, and you want to have a cutoff for, let's say, an English honors at 97 or 98%, and then you don't want certain students, so you say, let them score 100. And there'll be very few students who will do that. So you have this almost also as an elimination. So there are very many factors that play up when you declare cutoffs. I'd like to say that at Miranda House, we like to have a calibrated cutoff, and how difficult it is. So our cutoffs are high, but they're not hitting the roof actually.
They're hitting
but
98%, aren't
they are hitting that, but then there is a very large number of students who are yet coming to us with it. But let me also add that personally I think that a number is not a measure of capability.
I'd also like to introduce a small audience over here. These are all students who are actually seeking admission. Some of them, I'm sure, will make it 100% or 101%, but perhaps some of you would be disappointed, but there's always the second and third list. I'll come to you in a moment from now, but let me just go straight across to Chetan Bhagat, who's been tweeting about this. Chetan, let me ask you this first. You know, we're talking about the 100%ers or those who've done 99%, but what does it actually say about the exam that they've actually gone through? An exam where you got humanities students, you know, scoring 99%, because some colleges need 99% for humanities admission. So obviously there are students who have scored this.
Well, firstly, let me tell you, on national TV, I got 76% in class 10 and I got 85% in class 12. I think in today, and it wasn't that long ago also, so I think, but today they won't even let me close to DU. I think they won't even allow me to see the website of DU. So, but that's okay, because today I'm at a stage in life where I can firmly say that these numbers, beyond a point, they have some correlation to whether the student has worked hard or can focus. But it's just
and that's where it ends, right, Chetan?
A
student can
97
work hard
and
a student can focus, but that's where it ends.
No, like, I mean, for example, if somebody's got a 40% and somebody's got a 90%, clearly the 90% student has worked harder. But any statistician, any mathematician will tell you that at 97, 98, 99, it's irrelevant. Like, it could be one typo error or one error, and you could just, and then the gates are closed for you. But it's, and you know, the 100% is not telling you that DU is an amazing place. It's not telling you that this is a very good college. What it's telling you is there is something really, really wrong about our education system. But somehow, you know, if you're a hard-working student and not from the reserved category, I don't think anybody politically actually cares for you, because everybody on this panel agrees there is a problem, but somehow nothing can happen. For some reason we come up with all the time. DU can expand its seats, it can make it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, if that's the only brand we seem to have, or the other colleges, other universities can build their brand so we can fix the demand supply. And yes, what is this? We keep telling all year marks are not everything, but then when it comes to getting a simple graduation, marks are the only thing that matters. So what are we telling the children? Are we fooling them? And how long are we going to keep doing this? Every year are we going to come on this debate and say, oh, it's really bad, and 2 days later, well, whatever happened, we don't care.
Chetan, since I'd like you to come really next year on this program, if you don't mind terribly, can I just ask you for your time this time next year as well, 9 p.m. news, and we can have this
I think so, because the problem is, because you're so confident there will be a program next year, because you know this problem is not going to go away. But I want to tell the kids something, because I think it's important, this debate will never get solved. I want to tell the kids who are not getting admission, I want to tell you something, it doesn't matter. If they make such a stupid system, then it becomes irrelevant, and there will be some other criteria to judge you. When I take interviews to hire people for my own staff or whatever, or whether my friends do it, we will not bother about these things, because I don't know what that number is now. I'm going to look at your initiative, I'm going to look at who you are as a person in life and how you communicate and things like that, what your imagination is, how you talk. None of that is being measured in these marks. It's the same physics, chemistry, maths. We want to turn every kid into a professor, and we have turned this into some academic inflation exercise. So all this, they are going to fall in their own field, because one day they'll only undermine themselves.
Chetan, I'll come back to you in a moment. Shashi, tell me this, isn't it one of the strangest ironies that you've got a situation where students can't get into a Ramjas college in Delhi or a Hansraj college in Delhi, and they're very good colleges, and you know, I mean, that's not the issue, but these same students get into Cornell, they get into Harvard, they get into Yale. Isn't that bizarre? Absolutely.
It is, and it's a reflection of 2 or 3 factors. I have to disagree slightly with Chetan, whom I otherwise agree with, because unfortunately when the students concerned go for a job, if their resume shows they've got a degree from St. Stephen's College, it will be taken more seriously by an employer than if they've come from Bundelkhand University. And therefore there is definitely a difference in the advantage of getting into a college like this. But the problem is precisely this, that in the old days when there was more flexibility and more discretion given to the colleges, the accusations that came up in the system were those of favoritism and sometimes even of corruption, that somebody got in with lower marks because of their belonging to a particular community, or having been the son of an old boy of a college, or having paid off somebody. And so the courts intervened and made the marks the yardstick. Pratibha Jolly is quite right in saying there is a trust deficit. Now add to the trust deficit the demand-supply mismatch, where there are so many students chasing so few seats. Obviously there is a crying need for an expansion of higher education opportunities. We need practically double the number of universities and colleges in India that we have today. And that too will enable perhaps the pressure to decrease and these cutoffs to come down. But at the end of the day, the problem we have is we found a court-mandated solution that no college, no university, no politician, no ministry can undo. I would have loved to have done away with this. I'm somebody who believes very strongly that an individual is worth much more than the result of one set of marks. But the courts have tied everybody's hands in this matter, and that's why we're stuck where we are.
It can be done in Parliament, right? It can be fixed in by Parliament, right?
How can you do it in Parliament?
There is no Parliament of the country where
that would stand judicial scrutiny. What the judges are saying is the only objective yardstick is a vulgar number. And that's the only thing that prevents accusations of favoritism, corruption. Therefore, that mark is going to be the only yardstick. If you have a cutoff of 97, if you interview anybody who only got 95, then you have to interview the 5,000 other applicants who got between 95 and 97. So no college dares to challenge this particular system, and it's unworkable to challenge it.
Okay,
but you're saying it. I mean, there's nothing that cannot.
Chetan, we'll see what can be done in a bit. I just want to go across to Professor Mukherjee. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I think there is a space to operate between these 2 extremes. What Dr. Tharoor is suggesting is going back to the good old days But that's also, I think that was also a system that worked within the network of privilege. I think certain people, as he himself said, if you have a St. Stephen's tag, you get ahead in life. You come from Doon School, 3rd division, BA program, you get into ITC, 10 years down the line, you have a huge bungalow, which I think that's not fair. I think India has evolved. Modern India doesn't want to rest on those privileges. But there is a via media. Why can't we have a scholastic aptitude test for admission to higher institutions of higher learning? Why rely on a mark which says nothing about a student's ability to study a particular subject in college? What you get in the CBSE tells me nothing as a teacher admitting you to college about your ability to study the subject that you've come to me to study. Your 97% in English is meaningless for me. So why not a scholastic aptitude test like you have in so many countries for students to be filtered through an objective process,
right,
not through a network of privilege, but an objective process that does not rely on meaningless marks, but on an exam that tests your ability for.
That's a possible solution. Lata Vaidyanathan, let me ask you a question which is very important in this entire issue.
College admissions, for example.
Shashi, finish your sentence.
In the United States, the scholastic aptitude test is merely one element that an admissions committee considers in getting into college. I've actually been a student representative on admissions committee. You get this objective mark that comes from this objective test, but then you also look at the student's essay, see what the student says about his motivation to study, about his background, explain his family connections, explain his social context. You know, if you're a kid who's come out of a government school in Bihar, you may not have that 99% in the CBSE, but you may be bringing qualities that will do good to St. Stephen's College to have. But the St. Stephen's College Admissions Committee is not going to be able to see that. They're only going to see that he got 93 and not 99, and therefore he doesn't make the cutoff. Whereas in an American campus, the Admissions Committee actually looks at the SAT scores or the GRE scores, looks at the essay, looks at the recommendations and the references, what their teachers say about their student, looks at the family background, the context, the schooling, and takes an overall view. And it's entirely possible that you can ace the SAT, get 100 percentile in the SAT, and still not be admitted to a college, whereas somebody with 80% gets in because these other factors weighed more heavily with the admissions committee.
I made no
that much
to
of discretion and flexibility we should allow our colleges in India today.
Lata Vaidyanathan, let me ask you this. One of the scariest things that a student does in our setup is go through that Class 12 board exam. It's a battlefield. Students prepare for this. It's probably the toughest battle that many students will face in their entire lives at the age of 17, in having dealt with children, right? Can you explain to us how dangerous it is, in a sense, for a 17-year-old to be going through this experience, this ordeal?
You know, Vishnu, I've been listening very carefully to all that has been said, and I agree with most of what is being done. My personal depression comes from the fact that, you know, nothing can be done about it, and we have to depend on the Supreme Court judgment, and end of the day, marks will become the criteria for admission to schools. If you're going to tell a 17-year-old that the only way you can get into a college of your choice is by this rote memory and by the system of examination and marks that define your entire life, he's definitely going to go through it. We have heard of all the alternate systems that and good practices that are there across the world. My worry today is the number of students who come back to us and tell us with all our 96% or our 86% we get nowhere. The danger of such a system is that perhaps the whole system is losing out on the correct capability and the capacity of a child to study a particular subject. B, we are losing children who are being emotionally tired at the end of the system, wanting to hate education the way it is practiced today. And C, I think one is really worried that if this race of marks doesn't end, the entire final year of schooling is at stake with the quality of education that schools are supposed to provide to children. It has become completely a factory mode where the only training given is how to score marks, and everybody has lost it.
Mr. Pai, you've been listening.
No, I agree.
Okay, ma'am, I take the
agree.
point. I take the point that you're making. I just want to bring in Mohandas Pai, who's been listening very patiently. I apologize. We started this debate a bit late. There was some breaking news which was coming in earlier on. But Mr. Pai, in a sense, you must be a happy man. Manipal attracts, albeit at a considerable expense, some of the finest talent in the country. Students who do not get in to the best colleges run by the government in this country, or funded partly by the government in this country, run to you, sir. They believe that you're the next best option, if not the best option.
Vishnu, we are not very happy, and let me say that because in India we created a very perverse system for our young people. Because of shortage of seats in good colleges, and there are many of them, we restrict the seats. We are sending out a message that you go to a cramming school, get somebody to teach you how to answer like the lady said, and you get very high marks. Even after you get that, you're not very sure you're going to get a seat. So if you have somebody who's got 100 and doesn't get a seat in a college of his choice because of the system we have devised, what is the message we're sending out to the child? That, you know, your 100 is of no value, your whole hard work is of no value. And I think that's terrible for a society. We need to allow our good colleges to expand capacity. You know, we had the same debate last year or the year before when the cutoff mark was 100. We're going to have the same debate next year. The government does nothing. Why can't these good colleges expand capacity, double, triple them? Is quality going to go down? Quality is not going to go down because quality depends largely on the input. And they have enough infrastructure. Let them run in shifts. You know, in Manipal, you know, we feel so sad that we have to turn away hundreds of people. Government should give us approval to double, triple our capacity and will provide good education. Cost will come down. That's the only way to do, because we are a country of 1.2 billion people. And this whole perverse system of squeezing quantity because you want good quality, are standing and saying, oh yeah, I'm getting 100%, so I'm the best in the field, is so perverse and so stupid. You know, you feel shamed. And if you see all the face of all the children who got 100%, you can't see the faces. So I think, you know, the government has not done anything to allow them to expand capacity. Instead of that, what do, Vishnu? They set up bad colleges, allow some bad colleges to come up so they can go to bad colleges and get some seats for various different reasons. Allow free expansion of good colleges, increase capacity, you'll see a very new paradigm.